What if a single assassination attempt triggered 3 days of systematic slaughter that would scar a nation forever, and one American diplomat's courageous decision saved 700 lives? On February 19, 1937, Italian fascist forces under Marshal Graziani unleashed a brutal reprisal against the people of Addis Ababa following an attack on the viceroy's life. Over 30,000 Ethiopians, men, women, children, monks, and intellectuals were massacred in what became known as Yekatit 12 in the Ethiopian calendar. Yet in the midst of this horror, an American diplomatic compound became a sanctuary of hope. This isn't just a story of fascist brutality. It's a window into how different nations remember the same historical trauma and how one act of moral courage became a beacon of humanity in darkness. But before continuing to the next part, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, whereas it is no more than a single click for you. The morning of February 19, 1937, began like any other under Italian occupation. At the Grand Palace in Addis Ababa, Marshal Graziani held a public reception to distribute alms. At approximately 10:30 a.m., two young Ethiopian nationalists, Abraham Dabak and Mogus Ashtam, threw grenades into the crowd, wounding Graziani and several Italian officials. Though the assassination attempt failed, it provided the pretext Graziani needed for systematic terror. Within hours, he ordered what he called necessary reprisals, a euphemism for 3 days of unrestricted slaughter. For readers today, it raises uncomfortable questions. How does a colonial power justify collective punishment? What does this reveal about the nature of fascist occupation? And in the chaos that followed, where would innocent people find sanctuary? The Italian response strikes at the core of human morality and international law. Modern readers rightly recoil. How could an entire city be punished for the actions of two individuals? The fascists distinguished between pacification and extermination, claiming this was the former. Yet the visceral horror remains. This is not abstract military strategy. It is soldiers going door to door, dragging families from their homes, executing intellectuals and monks, burning neighborhoods. The massacre forces us to confront whether colonial occupation inherently produces such atrocities, a question that haunts post-colonial studies and human rights law to this day. But it also forces us to ask, when the world abandons you, who will open their doors? One resolution is to see Yekatit 12 as a singular pedagogical act, a fascist shock therapy to terrorize Ethiopia into submission. By ordering indiscriminate killing, Graziani aimed to demonstrate that resistance was futile. The Italians entered the logic of colonial domination only to exceed its already brutal norms. The 3-day massacre became a theater of terror. Neighborhoods burned, the educated class systematically eliminated, the church targeted. It was not about punishing the assassins, but about breaking Ethiopia's spirit, a violence that would make this occupation uniquely brutal even among colonial enterprises. Yet in this theater of terror, one stage became a sanctuary of unexpected mercy. But before continuing to the next part, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, whereas it is no more than a single click for you. For Italian fascist authorities, Yekatit 12 was first and foremost a necessary security operation demonstrating imperial resolve. Graziani's reports to Rome framed the massacre as pacification, the unfortunate but required response to terrorist attacks on Italian sovereignty. The Blackshirts saw themselves as bringing civilization to a backward nation. Resistance was not patriotism but banditry. The text of fascist propaganda read with deep reverence for the martyrs of empire, Italian casualties, while the Ethiopian deaths were justified as collateral damage in the noble project of empire building. The ethical tension was resolved by dehumanizing the victims. They were not individuals, but obstacles to progress. And those who sheltered them? Traitors to the fascist cause. Within fascist ideology, key nuances emerge. The regime emphasized that Italy brought order to chaos, civilization to savagery. The massacre was framed not as violence, but as restoring order after the chaos of the assassination attempt. Graziani's methods were brutal but presented as scientifically necessary. The surgical removal of subversive elements. Both the military and party agreed, however, that the climax wasn't the killing but the pacification that followed. The massacre proved Italian dominance and, they believed, secured the colony. The tension was resolved not by acknowledging atrocity, but by redefining it as historical necessity. Foreign interference in this necessary order was seen as diplomatic insolence. The primary fascist apologetic task was defending Italy's civilizing mission while honoring the necessity of violence. The strategy was twofold. 1. The deaths were regrettable but unavoidable. Graziani acted decisively to prevent greater chaos. 2. The story's horror was minimized in Italian media. Newspapers spoke of measures taken without detailing the slaughter. The tension was resolved not by confronting the massacre, but by erasing it from public memory. If Ethiopians remembered Yekatit 12 as martyrdom, Italians would remember it as a footnote to imperial glory. This selective amnesia would haunt Italy's post-fascist reckoning with colonialism. And the American role? Dismissed as sentimental interference in the hard work of empire. But, before continuing to the next part, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, whereas it is no more than a single click for you. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, drawing from ancient Christian traditions of martyrdom, employs a multi-layered hermeneutic, the literal, spiritual, moral, and eschatological senses. The literal sense acknowledges the historical massacre of February 19th to 21st, 1937. But the richer meaning unfolds spiritually. Allegorically, the victims prefigure Christ's passion. Morally, they model perfect faith under persecution. Eschatologically, Addis Ababa becomes the new Jerusalem where martyrs eternally reign. The violence is transposed from historical trauma to sacred witness. Yekatit 12 is not just remembered, it is liturgically commemorated, making the massacre a living memory in Ethiopia's spiritual consciousness. And those who open their doors to the persecuted, they are remembered as instruments of divine providence. For the Ethiopian Orthodox faithful, the primary application is interior. The martyr's willingness to die becomes the model for maintaining faith under persecution. Our Yekatit 12, trials, sufferings, losses, must be placed on the altar of witness, trusting God even when He allows what seems impossible. This moral sense transforms a traumatic narrative into a practical spirituality of perseverance and faith, energized by sacramental grace. The story's power lies not in justifying suffering, but in forming hearts capable of maintaining dignity and faith even in the face of annihilation. And those who provided refuge? They teach us that faith without works is dead, that true belief opens doors to the persecuted. On the ecclesial level, Yekatit 12 prefigures the Ethiopian Church's own passion, the unbloody sacrifice where the martyr's witness is made present in every liturgy. The massacre points to the perfect sacrifice of Christ that gives meaning to all suffering. The victims find their fulfillment in the communion of saints whose blood truly sanctifies the nation. This reading transforms the narrative from a historical trauma into the foundation of Ethiopian Christian identity. God receives the victims, and those victims are His faithful ones, offered once yet made present in every remembrance. The violence of February 1937 is thus sublimated into the peaceful mystery of eternal life. And those who save lives? They are remembered in the liturgy of gratitude, their names written in the book of righteous Gentiles. But, before continuing to the next part, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, whereas it is no more than a single click for you. For Cornelius van H. Engert and his small staff at the American legation, February 19, 1937, presented an impossible choice. As neutral diplomats, they were bound by protocol to avoid interference in Italy's internal affairs. But as human beings witnessing systematic slaughter, they faced a higher calling. When Ethiopians began streaming toward the Gibe, men, women, and children fleeing black-shirt death squads, Engert made a decision that would define his legacy. He opened the gates. Over 5 days, 700 Ethiopians found sanctuary within the compound's walls. 243 men, 262 women, and 195 children. This was not merely humanitarian aid. It was moral courage in the face of fascist terror, a refusal to be complicit through silence. For modern diplomats, it raises enduring questions. When does neutrality become cowardice? What is the true duty of a diplomat, to their government or to humanity? From February 19 to 23, 1937, the American Gibe became a city within a city, a fortress of humanity surrounded by barbarism. Engert, his family, 4 American diplomats, and 4 U.S. Navy technicians who had come to install a radio station, all worked together to shelter the refugees. They provided food, water, medical care, and most importantly, protection. The Navy technicians, trained for technical duty, became guards. The diplomats, trained for negotiation, became caregivers. Italian forces surrounded the compound, demanding the surrender of rebels. Engert refused, citing diplomatic immunity and humanitarian principles. For 5 days and nights, the compound held. On February 24th, the last refugees left, only after Engert secured personal assurance from the Italian Carabinieri commander of their safe passage. It was a victory not of arms, but of moral authority. Engert and his staff recorded the names of the male heads of household who had sheltered in the legation, a document that became both a historical record and a testament to lives saved. By actual count, 700 Ethiopians had taken refuge in the legation between February 19th and 23rd, Engert reported to Washington. Before leaving, a delegation from them very touchingly expressed their gratitude to the United States government for saving our lives. Yet this story was largely forgotten, absent from Ethiopian commemorations of Yekatit 12, absent from American diplomatic histories. It took until 2019 for the U.S. Embassy in Addis Ababa to launch a campaign to restore the Gibe building and reclaim this legacy. Today, the restored compound stands as a monument not just to American-Ethiopian friendship, but to the timeless truth that in the face of evil, neutrality is not a virtue, courage is. But, before continuing to the next part, please subscribe. It means a lot to me, whereas it is no more than a single click for you. Modern Ethiopia offers the most expansive reframing. For Ethiopians today, Yekatit 12 is not primarily about individual martyrdom, but about national memory with cosmic and historical implications. The martyr's sacrifice secures Ethiopia's oath. We will never forget, we will never allow such injustice again. This oath flows through the patriots to the liberation, to modern Ethiopia, and through the Yekatit 12 Martyrs Memorial Museum, to future generations. But the story has expanded. It now includes not only the martyrs, but also those who stood with them. The American Gibe, restored and reconsecrated in 2023, has become part of Ethiopia's memoryscape, a physical testament that even in our darkest hour, we were not entirely alone. Thus, February 19th is not an endpoint, but a beginning. The sacred seal on a promise that would make Ethiopia the guardian of its own history and the recognizer of those who helped preserve it. Following international law and human rights frameworks, modern Ethiopia frames Yekatit 12 within a global battle for historical justice. The massacre reveals that colonial crimes were not unfortunate incidents, but systematic war crimes. Ethiopia demands the test of historical truth. Italy must acknowledge not just the occupation but the massacre, a victory not just for one nation, but for all colonized peoples against historical denial. But the story has grown more nuanced. It now includes not only the perpetrators and victims, but also the rescuers. The American Gibe becomes a case study in diplomatic ethics, in the responsibility to protect, in the courage to choose humanity over protocol. This juridical dimension transforms the story. Ethiopia's demand for acknowledgement becomes a spiritual weapon defeating the powers of historical revisionism, seeking to minimize colonial crimes. The memorial is not merely remembrance, but juridical vindication, the truth preserved against fascist revisionism, and the good preserved against indifference. Modern Ethiopia exhibits little anxiety about the narrative's traumatic difficulty because the historical meaning transcends mere pain. Yekatit 12 becomes a type of the Ethiopian people, wounded by violence yet preserved by God to inherit freedom as guardians of memory and justice. The martyr's sacrifice models the nation's resilience. Liberation affirms Ethiopia's sovereignty. In education, Yekatit 12 is invoked constantly, not as distant history, but as living identity. When Ethiopians teach, "We are the children of Yekatit 12," they mean it nationally. The massacre's memory flows through generations to their modern republic. But the story has expanded. We are also the children of those who stood with us. The traumatic command to forget is historically conquered and geographically transcended. The true binding is the binding of Ethiopia's memory to its people and to those who helped preserve it. A covenant sealed in blood, guarded for generations, and now shared with those who prove that humanity has no borders. We have journeyed through 5 worlds of meaning: Italian Fascist, Ethiopian Orthodox, American Diplomatic, Modern Ethiopian, and International Justice, each confronting the same historical trauma, yet weaving from it a different tapestry of meaning. From colonial justification to sacred martyrdom, from diplomatic courage to national liberation, from historical denial to international solidarity, the Addis Ababa Massacre is not one story, but many. The Ethiopian tradition, with its liturgical framing and its national typology through the Yekatit 12 memorial, offers perhaps the most totalizing alternative, a narrative where the historical trauma is not denied but absorbed into a grander story of national preservation against colonial annihilation, a memory that journeyed from February 1937 to Ethiopia's eternal consciousness, and now includes those who stood as instruments of providence. The American Gibi, restored and reconsecrated, stands as proof that even in humanity's darkest hours, light can shine through open gates. This exploration reveals that history is not a static monolith, but a living conversation across time and perspective. The Addis Ababa Massacre remains a profound challenge, but the diverse ways Ethiopians, Italians, Americans, and the international community have met that challenge speak to the depth and complexity of historical memory itself. It reminds us that understanding history requires not just reading the documents, but listening to the many communities who have lived with the events, struggled with them, and found within them, even in the darkest passages, a path to encountering the truth that sets us free. And it reminds us that in the face of evil, there are always choices: to perpetrate, to ignore, or to act. Cornelius Engert and the saved 700 chose to act. Their legacy, now restored and remembered, challenges us still. What will we choose when history calls?